A lot of building a business is a question of what can scale and what can't. What will the HR department or sales, marketing, customer experience, employee experience, or even the foundational business model all look like as the company grows? The truth is that none of these systems will look exactly how they did when you started. And it could be like comparing apples to oranges when you put iteration 10 up against iteration 1. Scale requires doing things that don't scale and then pivoting.
I remember sitting in the airport going, did they just really buy a product from a bunch of people in a basement? Or people Google mapping our house as our office saying, hey, you guys are in a white house by a freeway. Are you guys a real company? Our journey is full of these experiences where we legitimately have survived off major pivots and doing things differently at every point of scale.
Ryan Smith is the co-founder and CEO of Qualtrics, a company that he started in his basement with his dad nearly 18 years ago. During those years, Ryan has faced a number of what he calls success disasters, moments when something so great happens that it breaks your current system. And that's the problem with scale. If you aren't thoughtful, it's the very things that are supposed to grow your business that may very well destroy it. There are always exciting things happening in the world of small business. The news that grabs the headlines, though, are always the highlights, the overnight successes, the billion-dollar IPOs, the massive exits. But just like your Instagram feed, that's never the whole story. Let's look deeper than the headlines and the press photos. Underneath all of that is the real work building something valuable and lasting. Don't get me wrong, I love crazy success stories and can be drawn into those big flashy tales just as much as the next person. But we all know that what's more important than the destination is how you get there. It's the struggles you have to overcome and the insights you learn along the way that make you who you are. So those are the stories we're telling. It's raw, it's honest, and maybe it's exactly what you need to hear. I'm Hillary Georgie, and this is The Journey. Growing up, all Ryan wanted to do was play. He was active and loved sports, traits that still live in him today. But what's different about now and then is that the younger version of Ryan despised even the idea of work.
Work wasn't in my vocabulary. I didn't really enjoy school that much. I just wanted to play sports. I have 5 siblings. Both my parents are academics, so they worked at the universities. The thought of me following in any resemblance of their footsteps couldn't have looked more distant at that time.
But even with this knee-jerk reaction to avoid the notion of work, it wasn't long before Ryan was having fun turning a profit.
The first business experience I had was going to a football game and scalping tickets. I figured I could buy tickets for less, turn around and sell them for more. And I would do this at like 10 years old with my brothers. We'd leave a game with $100 cash and we started with $5. Like we thought that was the craziest world and like this ultimate free market experience.
Ryan began to understand how work could be fun if it was on your own terms. Fast forward a few years and he and his siblings would find themselves actually in need of cash.
I remember one time we kicked off a summer. My mom drove all the boys down to downtown Provo. I was 14 at the time. We jumped out of her car and she said, okay, everyone, you're paying for your school clothes this year. You're not going to sit around all day. Don't come home till you have a job. And the thought was, how am I going to navigate this? We were basically cold calling to say, hey, if you got any work for a 14-year-old kid. Our parents just tried to put us in uncomfortable situations. And I think that's where a lot of the growing happens.
It wasn't how he wanted to spend his summer, but it created a sense of personal agency that became empowering. He had control of how much he made and what he could buy. After high school, Ryan was still struggling to identify what career path he wanted to pursue. Rather than let that indecisiveness panic him into making an impulsive choice, he took some time away and used it as an opportunity to explore.
I think there's something about not having this is my calling in life at an early age and just being open. I went to Seoul, Korea and taught English as an 18-year-old. I did a 2-year LDS mission in Mexico. And at 21, I found myself having no school experience. So I decided I was going to go to college.
Ryan attended the business school at Brigham Young University, bringing him back to his home state of Utah after a while abroad. And it was while he was at business school that he began to explore the project that would become Qualtrics.
And it actually started mostly because my dad was diagnosed with throat cancer and he didn't have long to live, and the diagnosis wasn't very favorable, and I wanted to be with him. And there was a lot of downtime. So instead of fixing up a car, we said, hey, let's work on this idea you have around tech, and I'll help take it to the world and build it so that someone like me could understand it. And so a lot of the path is really by accident or being drawn to things, but being open to what the world's kind of giving you and trying to make the best of what you're dealt with.
He and his father began working on Qualtrics in their family basement. And while ultimately it was a way for Ryan to discover his passion for business building, it also allowed him to work closely on an exciting project with his father.
When it was just my father and I, we stayed in a basement for 5 years. We started selling our product. No one really wanted to be data-driven. No one cared about the data they didn't have. They thought that they had everything. And if their customers were upset or if employees were upset, that they would just tell them. And, I think over time, we've realized that that's actually not what happens. People go to lunch and come back with a new job, and the switching costs for customers have never been at an all-time low to get onto a new product. And so what are the indicators that an organization can do to be able to have customers that keep on giving and want more of what you have, and have employees that are out there telling their friends, this is the best place in the world to work. This could be my last job. That's exactly what we help brands and organizations to do.
Early on, they were unable to convince organizations to buy in. Instead, they changed course and set their eyes on a market their family had an extensive history in.
We started selling to academics. We knew that people like my father were interested in this, even when corporations weren't. And no one would have really bet on that model from a venture capital standpoint. You've got people in a family business with a dad and a son. You've got a software that corporations aren't loving. You've got an academic community where there seems to be real momentum in getting universities on board with Qualtrics. However, the buyers don't have a lot of money, and there's really no game plan outside of that.
The business model seemed wobbly at best, but targeting academics proved to be the smartest decision they could have made.
This is where Qualtrics really took off. We were successful enough on a product standpoint that faculty members told their students graduated from the universities. They took Qualtrics with them. Someone went to Heineken and from Kellogg Business School and recommended Qualtrics there. Someone went to, Expedia out of University of Washington. And it goes on and on and on. And so we today have between 700,000 and 1 million students graduating trained on Qualtrics. And that's really helped accelerate our positioning into the enterprise, because a lot of these people are now in senior roles.
Those relationships he built early on are what have defined the Qualtrics brand since the beginning. They are what created a cult following and the reason why nearly 2 decades later, Ryan is still able to lead the charge.
The constraints that were on our business actually caused creativity. If someone would have given us a bunch of money in the basement, we would have never come up with the academic market model. And we also, if we did go there, we probably wouldn't have made it work and had to find a way to make it work like we did.
After the break, Ryan shares his journey scaling the company. He explains what success disasters are and what they mean for your business. Plus, he reveals how his love for sports is still playing a role in how he thinks about Qualtrics today.
As part of Salesforce's continued commitment to small businesses, they've recently announced Salesforce Care for Small Business, a combination of free products to help during the COVID-19 crisis. New customers will get 3 months free access to out-of-the-box CRM Salesforce Essentials and Analytics solution Tableau, as well as 6 months free access to collaboration tool Quip. Now, more than ever, small businesses need the right tools to connect with their customers. Salesforce is here to help. To learn more, visit salesforce.com/thejourney.
Since launching Qualtrics in 2002, a lot has changed, including the team, the business model, and the product. But there's one thing Ryan can always count on: that new challenges lurk behind every corner.
There has not been in 17 years a quarter or a month of what I would call smooth selling. It's hard for people to believe. I still get an alert on my phone that says payroll's due. I set it back in like 2006. I used to get really stressed when I'd get that alert, like, oh my word, we've got to figure out payroll. Primarily because we were bootstrapped for 10 years, which means we did not raise outside venture capital for 10 years.
Today, they've raised a total of $400 million in venture capital. But for the first decade, every dollar spent was a dollar from their own pockets. Every new hire, every customer, every pivot, every decision mattered. And when they made a mistake, there was no padding between the hit and the blow.
So the business really was built and sustained through the downturn, which was the shadow of the dot-com bust in 2002, the downturn in 2007, 8, and 9, coming out of that, and self-sustainable today, even within the SAP portfolio. And along that way, it seems like every single year as we scaled, every single quarter, there was a different battle that was going on. And right when the story couldn't get any crazier, something else would pop up. I remember that one of the first people we put on the Qualtrics platform, we lost their data, and it was a university. We've never got them back. That's why we have 99 of the top 100 business schools instead of 100. And everyone's like, why don't you go get that 100? I was like, because it's that 100th customer is a really good lesson that I like to think about a lot, and it won't happen again. When you get bigger, you're going to need the muscle and the scar tissue and those learning moments that you had at every single one of those phases.
The scar tissue made them resilient, and that muscle made them ready to take on any problem that popped up, even the good ones.
The problem you have is when we were a 7-year company with 500 employees, we had it set up one way. And then we kind of had what we call success disasters, where you have so much success or it gets big enough that you break it. And then we have to go to another model and another model and another model. And there's so many different ways to scale a business, but it's often overlooked at how should you set up or line up or scale your business given what part of the scale you're on.
After that, the question moves from, can my business scale, to, can I as a leader of this business scale with it?
There's really no playbook as far as if you can scale. I mean, that's one thing, is like, do you believe you can scale as an individual? Not everyone's cut out for that. If you do believe you can scale, the first thing is you need to accept the fact that you don't know everything and you need to be the fastest learner in the building. And that's mission critical. And so that requires you to be confident but open, humble but decisive, and really manage these polar opposite emotions. You have to care but not too much. All of this is part of that growing process.
And perhaps most important as a leader is to be ready for the long haul. Ryan didn't build the Qualtrics we see today in just a few months or a few years. It's a train that started rolling in the early 2000s and is still running full steam ahead.
If you want to be an entrepreneur, even the smartest ones I know, even repeat entrepreneurs, if you're not banking on a 10-year journey, something is fundamentally off. And if the people you hire or you want to work with aren't also thinking that way, then you're probably going to have a much less likelihood of actually achieving something, especially early on.
It's not enough for you to be committed to the 10-year or 20-year vision. Your team has to be committed too. Having a team you can lean on for feedback and input, people that you know will show up tomorrow no matter what, is priceless.
My CEO coach and board member, Kim Scott, wrote a book called Radical Candor. And Radical Candor talks about how to be direct and how to be direct with feedback. And the first principle of that is they have to know that you genuinely care. A lot of times there's not enough opposition. There's not enough healthy tension in the way to think about it. Part of the reason why is because it's painful. Going through iterations on ideas and problems is hard. They're hard in every relationship that you have. But when you're family, I always knew that my dad had to love me in the morning when he woke up, and so did my brother. But I really believe that we were able to go past the typical first or second or third iteration of storming out of the room saying, I'm done, or this isn't right, or your ideas suck. And we'd go 10 more iterations beyond that.
Ryan knows that he hasn't been the perfect founder or CEO, but that's what makes these relationships so meaningful, that you both have faith in each other to stick it out.
I've had those same moments with people on my staff or people that I work with and going, there's no way, like the blind spots are too big or the learning needs to be too much. But there's just a conviction that no, my job's to invest in people. My job's to make it work. And I would argue that the proudest moments I've had at Qualtrics are watching those people turn into world-class leaders and saying, boy, am I glad we didn't give up. And knowing when to do that and then when to actually say, hey, this isn't going to work out is not the science, but the art of being a leader.
Ryan's leadership style and the idea that you have to work hard together until it pays off all harkens back to his passion for sports.
I learned early on that I think I'm going to work until I'm 80. And once you learn that you're going to work, then it's like, okay, what do you enjoy? And I didn't grow up saying, hey, I want to go run an enterprise software company or grow up selling enterprise software or marketing it or building it. That wasn't in the cards. But if you go and look and you say, hey, what do you like about sports? Well, I like the competitive aspect. I like the team aspect. I like the fact that we can win together, that we can set our sights on a championship. I like how we can play it our way, but we come together as a holistic group. And then like you look at Qualtrics and it's like, wait, we can do it our way. We can come together as a holistic group. We can go individually and create. We can do things as a team. We can win.
Ryan is the captain of the team he always wanted to play on, and his team is dominating the game. His final piece of advice?
If I was giving any advice for people in their career, it's just have empathy, pivot and be nimble. Don't let that picture in your head of what you're supposed to be or the way it's supposed to go dictate where you go.
Because as the entrepreneur Paul Graham famously said, quote, do things that don't scale.
Today's uncertain business climate makes it critical to stay in touch with your customers and employees. That's why Salesforce recently announced Salesforce Care for Small Business, a combination of free products to help businesses during the COVID-19 crisis. New customers will get 3 months free access to out-of-the-box CRM Salesforce Essentials and analytics solution Tableau, as well as 6 months free access to collaboration tool Quip. Salesforce is here to help you stay connected. To learn more, visit salesforce.com/thejourney.